Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of Matthew. Today we're in Matthew chapter 24. We're looking at verses 32 through 35. Jesus has been talking to us about the second coming, his return. All eyes will see the Lord return as the King returns to establish his kingdom. Now, folks are naturally beginning to think, and the disciples were thinking, well, when will all this occur? You've told us some of the signs of that great distress, that great tribulation, and then your return is at the end of it. But when will all this happen? Jesus says, now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender, its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Now, all these things refer to the signs Jesus has been talking about, the distress, the tribulation, the false prophets, the false messiahs, etc. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Jesus makes it clear that his words carry the authority of Scripture itself. The authority of heaven. They will never pass away and they will never fail. So what he's told us in preparation, the longing for his return, the blessed hope of the church is certain. We know that one day Jesus will come. But now we have a little uncertainty about when he says this generation. He says this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. What does that mean? Now remember, when Jesus uttered these words, it was the year AD 30. A generation in biblical times is about 40 years, but it's been nearly 2,000 years since Jesus spoke these words, and he has not yet returned. So what did he mean when he said this generation will not pass away until these things have happened? Now you remember, when we began this passage at the very beginning of chapter 24, it started with the disciples asking the question about the destruction of the temple. Jesus had told them the temple would be destroyed, not one stone left on another. And they said, when will this happen? When will you return? What will be the sign? You remember, they assumed that something so cataclysmic as the destruction of the temple would also mean the end of the age and the return of Jesus. They thought it would be one and the same event. It was not. It was two events. They were mistaken about it being one event. But Jesus talks about both of the events. And so, as I've told you before, some of his comments are referencing the destruction of the temple, and some of his comments are referencing the end of the age. And you have to kind of distinguish between those two. And so when Jesus talks about this generation will not pass away until these things have happened, he is talking about the destruction of the temple. The disciples had asked, when will it happen? When will the temple be destroyed, not one stone left on another? And Jesus said, this generation will not pass away until this has occurred. He's talking about the destruction of the temple. And we know from history that the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the temple in AD 70. In AD 70. Jesus spoke these words in AD 30. So 40 years after he says these words, the temple is destroyed, and it has never been rebuilt since that time. That is exactly one generation. In biblical times, a generation is considered to be around 40 years. So before that generation passed away, within 40 years after Jesus spoke these words, the words he had given prophetically about the destruction of the temple came true. The Romans invaded the city, they put down the Jewish rebellion, and they absolutely destroyed the temple. Not one stone was left on another, and it's not been rebuilt to this day. So Jesus' words came true. And just as they came true in regard to the destruction of the temple within one generation, so they will be true, and they will come true in reference to his coming again. At the end of the tribulation, at the end of that great distress, Jesus will come again. He will bring judgment to those who are in rebellion against him, and he will bring deliverance to those who believe in him. He will come and establish the totality and the absolute consummation of his kingdom. Again, this is why we refer to the second coming as the blessed hope of the church. We long for the day when Jesus will return. Don't know exactly when it will be, but we know that it is certain that he will come. Now, tomorrow, as we continue our study, we're going to look at Jesus' words about not knowing the day or the hour and how that impacts us, but we'll look at that tomorrow. So I hope you join us next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of Matthew.